Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we are back to Lego Indiana Jones. The adventure continues. Let's continue. I'm off on my count, so I don't know if this level... how do I get in this level? I guess I have to dig the tank out of the doorway first. I don't know if this is going to be a big boss fight, or if this is just another level. The previous level was a bunch of fighting, but that doesn't really say anything. The one thing we haven't seen so far, I suppose, is a terrible car battle. And at this point, I guess this would be the only final opportunity if they were going to put a car battle section in the game. So, yeah, I think this is one of these terrible car battles. Yep, it is. Well, first things first. Use something better than a camel or a horse, because that's not going to work. We're going to have to do some trade-ups. This may not be as bad as the other levels, because as I'm looking here, it seems like it's just this tiny little figure 8. Seems a little strange that they wouldn't do a version of this in the Crystal Skull and instead, because this feels like the most tutorialized version of these car battles. A little figure 8 section, making it very easy for me to break the cars, and then it opening up to a larger section. I'm being very thorough here when I really probably shouldn't bother. Alright. So, the question we need to ask ourselves is, can I damage these cars? And I think the answer is no. And see, this is just a full-on racetrack. It's just a round circle. And we need this car. That's a more powerful car. There we go. So the only thing I can assume is they had gotten some game testing feedback by the time they had done this level and realized that nobody likes these. Well, the vast majority of people don't like these. Although this almost works. This is almost what I would want in a level like this. The thing I would do is I would do as we saw in Lego Batman 2, where there were times in Lego Batman 2 where we were driving the Batmobile and going down a set path and firing weapons off the Batmobile too, and we didn't really have to control it because it was on the rails, and so you could go left or right a little bit and hit some collectibles, but mostly the camera was directly behind the car the whole time, and you didn't really have to drive. All you were doing was trying to defeat a set number of bad guys. And it works so much better in Lego Batman 2 than it is working here. This is like complete opposite of what I would want. This is a step in the right direction, and it fills in a gap in our knowledge, I suppose, as far as the way the games were produced. Now that I've played Lego Indiana Jones 2 and seen this design, because this is not the only Lego game I haven't played before, but the only licensed Lego game I believe I haven't played. There have been a lot of non-licensed Lego games and a lot of different versions of licensed games that are on different consoles. So like the 3DS, the Game Boy version of some of the licensed products are going to look different and have totally different levels. And also I think that probably hurt their development quite a bit when they're having to make separate games or separate sections for different versions of the games. It is definitely an argument that is being considered and spoken out against for like the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo consoles for a while now, where they've said just forget making consoles, just put it on cell phones and PC. It would be a major step forward if Nintendo did that, but I can tell you for certain it's not going to happen anytime soon. Maybe the new president of Nintendo could be convinced of that, but I think it's probably more of a cultural thing inside all the people that work at Nintendo that they're not for that. There was a recent YouTube video in which the Nintendo of America president was arguing in a kind of a debate style for why Nintendo should continue to make consoles, because he's saying they innovate and everything, and the Nintendo consoles are different and innovative, and that's something that they want to add to the video game industry. And while it's true the Wii, which is like 8 to 10 years old now, was innovative and added a bunch of different ways to play games, those different ways all ended up being the same waggle your joystick gameplay that never really got implemented. And there is a certain point where industry standard rules, even if it's not good, particularly in technology. It's like there were things that were better than certain technologies, and you kind of see this with Apple in a lot of ways. Apple will say, well, the Thunderbolt is better than HDMI connection, or the Thunderbolt controller is better than USB connection. And it may very well be the case under certain uses, and if it's implemented properly, it may very well be the case that Thunderbolt is better. Doesn't really matter, because USB and HDMI are the industry standard. So if the Wii U's waggle and the Nintendo Switch's controllers are better than what you get on a PlayStation 1, a PlayStation 4, or an Xbox One, that was a mistake there. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, because the video game industry needs to make games that play on all those consoles, and if there's not parity, if they're not the same, there's one version of that game is going to be different than the others, and that's not something we really want. Finally, I get to knock one of these guys just all the way off a map. I've been trying to do this for a long time, and it hasn't been working. Here we still have the same problem of the game being boring and long in these levels. So yeah, out of stubbornness that Japanese people and companies in particular, Japanese companies in particular, have. There's no reason to expect that Nintendo games are coming to PC or any other console anytime soon. That being said, we as an industry can do our best to not buy the Switches and not buy into the hype of a new console and eventually starve them out. The problem is to actually starve out Nintendo, which has got enough money to operate at a loss of some amount for decades, is going to be just a real drought. And it's important when looking at the debate with Reggie Fils-Aimé, Nintendo of America president, to realize Nintendo of America is just kind of like a wholly owned subsidiary of Nintendo Japan, and they have no decision power. They don't make any decisions at all. They are a localization company, and that's all they really are. They make the American versions of what the Nintendo of Japan tells them to do. So it's until you have the Nintendo of Japan president as ear, and he actually would listen to you and decide to do something different, it doesn't even matter. So all Reggie Fils-Aimé is he literally is probably the least powerful CEO of a company in America, in the United States. He has no power. There are no real Nintendo of America games that get made, which is weird, and particularly for me, it's kind of a realization I didn't make early enough, because I was planning on going to a school in Redmond. Here the game has lost my controller again. Man, this is a new bug. Definitely a new bug. I was going to go to a video game programming college that focuses on that, called Digipin. I'm not sure really whether Digipin is a prestigious enough one, but it feeds directly into working for Nintendo, and that was my plans. And so there's this college called Digipin in Redmond, Washington, and I was going to go there and I was going to try to work for Nintendo. And now in retrospective, I'm glad that didn't work out, because it wouldn't have been very fun, honestly, working at Nintendo of America, which is all I could ever really do. Then Nintendo of Japan is not going to hire a non-native Japanese person. It's just not going to happen. So I'm really glad that didn't happen. It would have been very disheartening to realize that the only thing I would have been doing would have been like bug fixes and localization, translating games and into English from Japanese, and probably doing simple things like support or just boring things in general. Maybe you would have worked on the Miiverse a little bit. Maybe you would have just been moderating the community. There is a group, actually the same class that would have been the class if I had made it to Digipin, that went on to make Portal, and they got hired out by Valve, and I kind of question if that was even really great for their careers, because then they made Portal and Portal 2, possibly the best two games arguably ever, and then they worked at Valve and really haven't done anything else for years. So as far as learning new things and seeing your your career grow and grow. Instead, it kind of just peaked, and then you were left to work at Valve, where Valve lets you do whatever you want, and so there's no real drive to do anything. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the people that worked on Portal are now just doing customer service and or working on Steam's backend. Uh, so still not exactly what you want. That is also true for people that work at Google. Uh, the number of people that are highly qualified working at Google creates this scenario where people with master's degrees are doing very basic things like customer support and tech support. And that would be hugely disappointing to do all that studying and think you're going to get into Google and do something great, and then it turn out that you're not going to do anything, that your talents are just going to be wasted. And all three of those companies are great examples of you probably don't want to work for them. I mean, it's an amazing thing to say you work for them, and it very arguably maybe you do work for Nintendo or Valve or Google for a year or two, but you kind of also want to get out from them. One of the persons that worked on Portal eventually became like the CEO of King, creators of Candy Crush, and got moved into being a very high up person of a company that makes a pretty terrible game. And then I believe King eventually got bought by a Chinese company, so I think she's working in China now, making more Candy Crush spin-offs. Like, what? Not very ideal as far as the career you would want as a video game. But like I'm saying, maybe you do for a year or two work at any of these companies just to get it on your resume, and then you see how it is and you go, well, now I'm going to go start my own company. And that's really I guess the best thing you could do is, if you can afford it, which you probably couldn't as an entry level video game programmer, to say I'm going to go join some small independent company or start my own, because I'd actually like to work on a project that is interesting instead of doing almost nothing. Anyways, that's a big stretch. Let's see, do we have any other extras here? So since that was the terrible car race, then we know the next level will be a big boss fight, and then we'll be done with The Last Crusade. And again, it's one of those cases where they had a tank boss fight in Lego Indiana Jones 1. It worked fine. And then they have a tank boss fight here, and it works not as well, but it's there. So after they created it, I don't know how you would integrate both of those. I think the teams would have had to work together, where you maybe do a little bit of driving around and crashing into cars to do some damage to the tank. Then you hop on top of the tank and do the boxing that's in Lego Indiana Jones 1. Or you just take this level and you say it's an alternate take. They certainly, since Steven Spielberg's a big name, could have framed this entire game around the idea that you're filming the movie. And so just put like a cutscene where you see a minifig Steven Spielberg, who would have been a cool character to actually have. I don't really love when Lego games add unrelated people into the game, but when you add like Stan Lee or in this case Steven Spielberg, who is the director and I believe writer of the series, he would be a very nice minifig to unlock, and I guess I'll keep an eye out and see if that happens. I suspect it won't, though. But yeah, you could have had a scene where you see Steven Spielberg as a minifig filming this, and then it zooms in a little bit more, and then this is the alternate take, and just put on the screen alternate take of the scene, and do it that way. Much like I think how these made up boss fights could easily be an alternate take to, or they could be like hallucinations of Indiana Jones, so he just gets bonked on the head as a running gag at the end of each of the final levels in the game, and then dreams up the big boss fights. That would be kind of a funny gag too. Anyways, that's it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on basically any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.